Alright, so next weekend, and we're going to try to get another video done here. And when I bolted my battery in, well, actually I didn't bolt it in, I bolted in the tray. I'm a little concerned about the positive being here. I've got this little rubber thing on there just in case the battery moves around. But I need a hold down, and I looked on the interweb, and let's see. All right, for the actual hold down, it is 26 bucks, and let's see, for the little rod coming up, how much? 15 bucks. Probably some shipping too. I just don't want to pay $14 for a little piece of round stock. So what I've done in here is rounded up some round stock, and actually it didn't cost anything. This is the stop lever from some old lawn motors that were broke down and rusted through, and I'm just going to fabricate, and it'll be free. So with a few little pieces of angle iron and some bending and welding, I think I can just fabricate one. So we're going to go ahead and start on this little project. Okay, I got my first little piece of angle iron down in here, and I'm gonna mark it about right there and take it over and tack it and see if it still fits. Okay, that one seems like it's in the right spot. So go ahead and mark this one, give it a little bit of slack, and see if we can get this one tacked on there. Alrighty. Okay, it looks like everything clears, and there's a little tension when you push down on it. So I'm going to need to make my hook rod and put some threads in it. And in the original one, they've got a hoop here, and I don't know if I can bend it that tight, but we'll see. We'll make something work. Okay, I got this other rod bent up and got a little hook thing on it, and it's gonna hook right there. And in the picture of the original type, they have the hoop off-centered over here. Now it makes sense because that rod comes up there even though it's bent over to center up. So gonna try to figure out a way to make a hoop on this. I don't don't know if I can, it's a small little round hoop, so I may have to make a hoop and then weld it on, but we'll see. We'll try making a hoop out of this. Okay, this is what I came up with. I got a bolt and I welded this round stock to it, and it's got a hex on it so I can clamp it in the vise. And I got this little piece of round or square stock so I can have some leverage. We'll see if we can create a hoop and then we can weld it to the end. Okay, it's kind of spiraled, but I think if I cut it off and hammer it flat, we'll be good. Through. There we go. Alright. If I cut it right here at an angle, I think that'll work. One hoop. Okay, I'm thinking about right there, so we can chop off this one and this one and weld them together right there, and I think we got our hoop right where we need it. Come on, Vice. Got a grip. Okay, I put a little bevel on the two rods so that it wasn't just welded on the surface, and I welded the hoop closed. So now I'm going to do a little bit of sanding and grinding on these welds, clean them up a little bit, and then we'll throw some paint on this. Okay, I put some threads on this rod and tightened it down, and it's in there good. It's not moving, nothing in front, back. So I think we're good with the positive side being close there. So seems like homemade bracket hold down is gonna work fine. Unbolt this and get some paint on it. Okay, now that we got our battery mounted to where it isn't going to be flopping around in there, we can really start the motor now. Pour some gas in the tank. The fuel lines are run, but I'd much rather get part of the wiring done first. And that way we can use the key to start it and turn it off, and you know, it's just a little safer that way in case we get a big leak or something. So to start out, they come with a mega fuse, and I'd like to hide it down here behind the battery, and also it'll be a short distance to make up a cable to go to it, and got it in here. So they come with this mega fuse jumper which links them together, and then you can bolt them down. So this is a good starting point. One of them we can run to the alternator. The other one will be the main wire going out to everything in the vehicle. Now originally they would have terminated everything on the starter, and I don't like putting it there because it's down by the exhaust. It's just difficult to get to. Up here, if you have a problem, it's a lot easier to access. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this mounted, do some measuring to make a cable to go to the alternator and to the battery. Okay, I got a couple of cables made up. This little short one is going to go over here to the main fuse and then up to the battery. And this one here is going to go to the alternator. It came with a little boot thing, and that will go there and connect up to this terminal right here. So basically this right here is the alternator fuse, and this one over here I'm going to put a terminal end on this main power wire, and down in here I've got the main engine wiring harness just kind of laying there. to where I can have the right length, so I'll know where to cut this wire off and put a terminal end on it. The nice thing about American Auto Wire is when you're done, you get about $100 worth of wire left over. So it's getting kind of late today, and I think I'll come in tomorrow and put that terminal on. I want to get all this hooked up before I set my battery back down in there. Okay, it's the next day. Pretty nice day. Little warm. Okay, a lot warm. Getting ready to solder on my terminal end to the main power wire, and gotta get some stuff rounded up. Wire strippers, little torch, some solder, and we can try to see how much stuff we can get wired into the engine wiring harness. Got to wire up the distributor, the hot wire, tack wire. Over here there's the temperature sending unit. Down there is oil sending unit, and I want to see if they've got one of the connectors for this electric choke. It's not original. I found this off another carburetor, but it's going to need the special little spade terminal. It's kind of L-shaped. Might have to come up with something for that, but get all that wired up. I think I'll put in the main fuse box, and we'll just coil up all of the wiper motor wires for now, but all the other stuff we can get hooked up, and that way we can kind of power up the engine compartment. So I'm going to see how far we can get today. Okay, I've got all my terminal ends on, and I just gotta get them bolted down, and then I can drop the battery in here, and I'll hook up all the positives but leave the negatives off, which reminds me I need to make a chassis ground so that the body itself is grounded. And if I can find the other nut here. Okay, I'm gonna have to find a shorter socket for that, or see if we can get it with this. Okay, I think that's gonna work. Hook this end up to the battery. This end over here to the alternator, and we'll be good to go. Okay, we have got our battery mounted and little covers on our fuses, and everything on the positive side is wired up. So before I plug in this and put the under dash wiring harness, I need to put in the electric choke wire and the tach wire, because we do have a tachometer and electric choke. So those would go right there and there in those two blank spots. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those pinned in, and well, we can go from there. Okay, we've got those pinned into the correct spots, and when we go to plug in our under dash wiring harness, we'll have a wire going inside for the tachometer. So now I'm gonna get the under dash wiring harness and go ahead and put all the fuses in, because it's a pain in the butt trying to get up under the dash and put the fuses in after you've bolted it up in there. So we're going to get that done and put it up in place. Okay, got all our fuses in according to where they're supposed to go, and now I think we can go ahead and mount this up in place. Okay, let's see if I can reach this up in here and get one of these started. Maybe it'll find the hole. Oh yeah, right in. Okay, let's see if we're lined up down here. Went a little easier than I thought. Got wires hanging everywhere. See, we got our rear harness here. This is an auxiliary harness for aftermarket stuff. And over here we've got this extension so it fits different year vehicles. And this is the one for the high beam, low beam, which I don't have any holes for. I'm just gonna have to kind of guess and use some self tappers to mount that. So we'll get that plugged in for high beam, low beam. And somewhere in here is the ignition wires. It's a 2-part plug. It's somewhere here. There's a bunch of instrument cluster hookups, and oh, here we go. That is for the ignition switch. Got to kind of put the two together and plug it in. I can't see it, but maybe you guys can back there. But that's where that's got to go, and hopefully everything will work. Okay, I use this long extension with a 3/8 to get up in there and bolt down my engine wiring harness. And I've got all the wiper, washer stuff all separated out, and we've got it down to just the engine stuff. We got the coil, the oil sending, blue, green is temperature, tan is electric choke, and tachometer. And I've got the starter wire and the main wire coming through here. Now I put some zip ties temporary just so that they're not flopping around. And this is the alternator wire for the gauge, and I'm going to have it follow up to here and put the terminal in on it, plug it in there so that our bolt gauge will work. And also the ignition switches on these have a rod going down the top of the steering column, and sometimes they just won't quite go to the cranking position. So what I like to do is I put the starter wire in with a bullet connector, and they'll come together up in here kind of hidden back. But if your ignition ever fails, you can just come out here, unplug it, and hit it on the positive and get it to crank in an emergency. Also, if you ever need to test your starter, you can do the same. So I'm going to go ahead and measure these out for length and get the terminal ends on them and route them up over here where this strap is, and we'll have to see where they go from there. So I'm gonna get working on that. Okay, I got my tack and coil wire cut to length, and I got all my little pieces rounded up here, terminal ends and the covers for them. And actually, when I looked at the directions, you would think this would be for the coil, but it's not. That little slot is for the tack. This one is for the coil. You'd think the red one would be for the coil, but it's backwards. So we're going to get these soldered on here and plug them in and move on to some other wires. Okay, what you seen me doing there was when you go to solder these, if you're going to solder them, you got to hold them upright, otherwise the solder will run down into your spade connector and it won't plug in. So I always try to kind of hold them upward. So let's get our connectors on here and see if they're going to click in there. Okay, that's going to fit. And our little notch is this way. Alright, so we have tack and coil. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out the other wires, solder them on, put on the connectors, and we'll get everything routed. Okay, I've pretty much got the rest of the engine compartment wiring harness done. Not much to it. Down there in the dark is the oil pressure sensor, and over here is the temperature sensor. And the electric choke, it doesn't come with this type of plug for this big old fat terminal end, and all I could find in all my junk is a broken one. So eventually I'm going to try to find one of these that'll clip onto there good. That's why I left some extra wire. And we got our tack and our coil hooked up, and I got it kind of temporarily electric taped, and eventually we'll go ahead and put that in conduit. And I went up under here and lowered down the steering column and plugged in the ignition switch, and I was looking at this plug for the turn signal switch, and it turns out we've got 2 extra wires here. So I went to look at the wiring diagram to try to figure out what these extra wires are for, and it seems as though here, E and F, it says none. And I was still curious, so I have this generic GM wiring harness, and right here it says key alarm, which would be F and E. So evidently it's set up to have a buzzer, and I would imagine that the door jamb switch for the courtesy lamps would ground a buzzer if your key is still in there. Well, we don't need that annoyance, so I think we're good there. And I think that's going to be the end of what we're going to do this weekend. I'm going to come in next weekend and try to get a little bit more done before we go to fire it up. I'd just like to hear the motor run. But we've got a bunch of wires that are actually bare wires, and of course some of them are grounds, and so I think I'm gonna run through here and kind of tape up the ends just so nothing grounds out. I don't want to be changing fuses and stuff, so probably gonna continue on with this next weekend and possibly fire it up and see how the motor sounds. Okay, it is the next weekend, and I had to charge the camera battery. But meanwhile, I've been doing stuff, and I had all these bare wires over here in the wiring harness, and got them all taped up. So far, nothing's grounded out, and went ahead and hooked up a chassis ground, and I went to fire it off, and it was spitting and popping, and I discovered that I had my rotation wrong. I'm so used to Chevy where it's clockwise and Pontiac is counterclockwise, but got that straightened out and got it to fire off. So we'll go ahead and fire it up. Let's get this little camera set up here, and we'll see. I don't have my throttle cable hooked up yet, so I gotta kind of do this and reach over here and get the key. So we'll see if it's gonna bust off. Having a little bit of problem getting fuel up to it. I think my needle and seat is sticking from time to time, but let me see. Well, it don't help that I ain't got a gas pedal, so but she's alive, and I gotta set the timing and whatnot, so I'm gonna do a little more adjusting and see if we can't get her to idle, but she works. So I'm gonna do a little bit more fiddling around with the timing, see why I'm having a little trouble with fuel we put 5 gallons in it, and I took the air compressor and blew it up the line until we got fuel up here. But I just think that the needle and seat is just not letting enough fuel in. So I'm gonna go ahead and fiddle around with this stuff a little bit and see what we can do. Okay, so I discovered that my timing was off a tooth. I had it all the way over here, and so I took my distributor out and advanced it a tooth so that we can get the correct amount of advance going on here. But I went to crank it again, and I think I killed my old starter. It's just dragging real hard, barely turned over. And she's hot, real hot. I got this fan down here going for a while and got it to cool down, but it still ain't spinning it fast enough to start it. So got another starter on order. It won't come in till tomorrow. So I'm just gonna do a few odds and ends. I think I'll go ahead and hook up my throttle cable, and that way at least we'll have a pedal inside the car. So meanwhile, I've done a little cleaning up on it, and I've got the pedal itself cleaned up and a little paint on this. It was getting pretty rusty. And then I got the bracket here. It's a big old bracket, plastic piece. Dug these out of the little storage room. But right here, this little pin that goes through here, it's supposed to have a push nut on it. So I was surprised AutoZone actually had these in stock. So I'm going to see if I can, if one of these is going to fit, that way so our gas pedal ain't falling off. So I'm going to try one of these and see if they actually fit. Okay, I got 2 different sizes here. This one seems like it's too small. This one might be too big, but if it falls off, then I'll try to pound that one on there. We'll see if this is going to fit. Well, yeah, it's gripping it good. Yeah, I was surprised that they had little clips like this. I'm gonna put the rest of the way in my little drawer of rare things, and that way if I need one again, we'll have them. So I'm gonna get this pedal assembly mounted and put the cable up in there and see if we can get that to work. Okay, let me see if we can get this tightened down. Right. Now, we'll go ahead and get our cable hooked up. This cable to hook through here. Right. Now we just got to get it hooked up to the carburetor. I think that's gonna work. Okay, I like leaving these little clips on the carburetor so they don't get lost. And let's see if we can convince it to come off of here without losing it. Oh, come on, cooperate. Well, don't want to off of there. Just gotta, this one is particularly tight. There we go. Alright, let's see if I can get this on here. And put this clip back on. There we go. Alright. Now, we need to go see how the pedal works. Alright. I got full throttle. Okay, got my battery disconnected and things have cooled off down under here. So, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get this starter off for tomorrow. This one. Okay. Thought that was 9:30 seconds, but evidently it's 11:30 seconds. Yeah. Okay, I gotta find the right socket. Okay, 11:30 seconds is correct size. Back in the day, they had some weird sizes, you know, instead of just making it 5/16 or 8mm. I had to go with these in-between sizes. So I think we're good there. Just trade this in for a core, and tried to save a couple bucks, but this starter always did kind of crank slow, but it always crank it, but I think it just killed it trying to start a fresh new motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and trade it in. Okay, meanwhile, while I'm waiting on the starter, I decided to start working on the wiring for the instrument cluster. And I figured out that we have the Rally Sport gauges. Two clues. One has wire for the clock, which we do have, and there are 3 blanks, which we have 3 blanks, and there is no wiring for fuel or volts. This is a separate set of gauges that's set farther over in the dash, and there's multiple ways to wire them up and use these 2 plugs, and you wire them all into this plug with all these little ends. And the reason why it's not wired up is because there's 4 different ways to hook it up. You can have aftermarket gauges and wire them up this way. Then you have Rally Sport, And this kit goes from 74 to 80, I think it is. And it's wired up differently, and 77 to 80 is wired up differently if you have standard cluster where all your gauges are all in one. So what we're going by is the Rally Sport, and the other little gauges over here we have, if I can find it, these two plugs, which is fuel gauge and voltmeter. And those two plugs, I found them because there's like a gazillion wires in here, and one of them sits at a 90, the other one like at a 45, and these two wires plug in here and here, and they're at least 4 to 8 feet long, and the instrument cluster sets right here, which is really close. So I think I'm going to make them about 2 feet long to get a little slack so you can get the instrument cluster out and unplug it. And I think that should be plenty long enough. So I'm going to get started on getting this all wired up. Okay, for the time being, I'm not going to worry about pinning them into this plug. I'm just going to concentrate on getting all of these soldered on here. So I'm going to make sure that I get my heat shrink on here. Now most people would just crimp them, but I've just gotten in this habit of soldering everything. That way you know it's not going to come loose. It's a little more work, but if you get the right crimping tool, you know, you can still do a good job of crimping them on there. So I'm going to start with this, the ground, because in the instructions here it's got to have a jumper wire because there's 2 grounds. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one first. That way I can connect my jumper wire and we'll have 2 grounds. Okay, so now we have 2 grounds as per the directions, and so I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these soldered on, and then I'll work on this other wiring harness and get all those with terminal ends on them. Okay, I've got all of my terminal ends soldered on, and that's one harness down. Now I can start on the other one. I don't know if you noticed, but when I was doing the time lapse, I was sitting there trying to crimp them, and they just slide right off, and then I had to really mash them down with these. So that's why I'm sure there's some really good crimping tools that work good, but you know, I've been doing it this way for years, so that's just the way I like doing it. So we're going to get started on the next one. Okay, now that I got all my wires soldered, I'm going to start out pinning this dark blue one because there is 2 dark blue ones. This is oil pressure, and it goes in pin 8. So I want to make sure we get that one in there first. And the other dark blue one is right turn, and it goes in pin 6. So you can barely see these. So that's gonna be right there in pin 6. Alright, and tan is gonna be on the other wiring harness, which is, if I can untangle it, going to be 4. Let's see if I can see this. Yep, there's 4. Cooperate. There we go. So that is brake light switch, and gray dash lights is going to be number 1. Okay, that one's not wanting to catch. Let me get this little keeper pulled out. There we go. Alright, so let's see. We've got 5 ignition pink. It's gonna go right there. And green high beam. Let's see, that'd be the high beam indicator, is number 7. So that one's gonna go right there. And what else we got? We're missing 2 and 3. 3 is blank. 2 is ground. So let's see if we can get this one up in there. Okay. Alright. So we've got 3 is blank. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Alright, so now we got to get the other side done. So 9 is the other ground. Let's see if I can see. Alright. That one caught good. Blank, blank, blank. And 13 dark green. Water temp. Let's see. Water temp. So that's going to be 13 right here. Yeah. Alright, that one caught good. 14 light blue, left turn. And there we go. 15 yellow clock. Oh, wrong way. Right, and 16 is blank. So bring it over here, see if it makes sense. We've got 1 here, 3 here, like so, and we've got 1 blank one. What is that going to? Have to trace it out and see what that might be going to. That is odd because there is a contact there for it. Be the 3rd one over. We'll have to investigate that. Okay, let's see where this 3rd trace goes to. To that light, no other lights. So what light is that? Can't see it very well. Oh, it says fasten seat belts. Evidently, it's not wired up for that. I don't think there's any sensors on the seat belts. So that's it's odd that it would be there and they don't put any wires to it, but well, I guess we just won't need that. So I think we're good. Okay, I got it set up to test our lights, see which ones are burnt out, and I'm going to try the turn signals first. Okay, there's the left, there's the right, and dash lights. Yeah, that was hard to tell. They're kind of dim, but yeah, you can see they're coming on over here in the back. They're lighting up. So I think those are all good. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug it in next time we crank it up and see if the tach and oil pressure and temperature work, and that way we can, before we put it all in the dash, we can check everything out really good. So go ahead and see. I think the starter is coming in a lot sooner than I thought, so if it has, we're going to go ahead and get that put in. Okay, got the new starter bolted on and tested it out. It kicks it over really good, and I've got my gauges sitting up here plugged in, and I'm going to see if anything works. See if we can get it to crank up again. Okay, apparently nothing works. Yeah, let's check it out a little bit and see if we've got good contact on everything. Got the tack wire plugged in, and well, these are really old gauges. May have to take it apart and look inside and see if there's any bad connections, but yeah, it's oil pressure's pegged, water disappeared, tach's not moving, so But I just want to fire it up and listen to it a little bit more. Okay, she sounds strong. Kind of loud. Eventually I'm going to have to go ahead and start welding up some exhaust. I got a set of pipes. It was for the Belvedere, but I can always order some more for that. Maybe put a muffler or two on it so that you can actually hear yourself think, because man, that's loud. I don't know if the camera conveys that, but it's loud. So I'm going to open up this gauge cluster and see if there's anything inside that's looks wrong, and see if we can do something with it. Okay, I discovered what was the problem with the gauges. It was me. I was being stupid. As I was checking continuity on all these traces and checking the grounds, I realized I hadn't hooked up any grounds. So, of course it's not going to work. So, I did a continuity test to see which grounds were which. And this one right here goes to the gauges, and this one over here goes to these two individual gauges. So if you see, when I turn the ignition on, it starts working, and when I start it up, the tach oil pressure is going to work, and I'm sure when the motor gets warmer, that will start to work. So, here we go. Let's see if it's still going to work. Yeah, it's amazing how everything seems to work when the grounds are hooked up. So, I don't think we have a problem with the gauges. Even as old as they are, they're still working with a good wiring harness. And grounds hooked up, of course. So, of course my fuel gauge isn't going to work until I get the rear wiring harness hooked up, and we've got a brand new sending unit in there. So hopefully that will work. But I guess we can go on and find other things to do now. Okay, I went ahead and plugged in my light switch and my high beam, low beam, and down here plugged in the turn signal stuff, and so I can test out, make sure that the turn signals and high beam, low beam are working. So we've got left turn, right turn. Of course, they're not going to flash until we get the other harnesses with bulbs in them. And let's see, we'll turn on the headlights, and that's probably hard to see, but there's the high beam, low beam indicator. And got the dimmer switch turned up. It's hard to see in the daylight, but Yeah, the lights are on. Kind of see them from the back. If it was dark, you'd be able to see them pretty good. The dimmer switch is working good, so I think that's about where I'm going to end this video. I think next time around we'll go ahead and do the rear wiring harness, and since I already got the tail light lenses in there, we'll get that wired up and hook up the fuel sending unit and see if that fuel gauge is still going to work. So we appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you around next time.